What does it mean to design your life? I think that is a massive question that every single one of us has to ask ourselves. It's something that I talk about on a regular basis. I mean, I actually say that if you don't know where you came from, which means you don't know who created you and why he put you here, you're going to have a really, really challenging time answering that question. But I'm looking forward to talking about that and so much more with my guest today, Stephen Courson. Stephen and I met, this has actually been a theme a lot lately. Stephen and I met through a Twitter post, X, for those of you that are hip to the new. And that's it. Literally, we've had some exchanges that way. We have not talked until right now. So you guys are getting that, which is just super cool. But for now, I just want to welcome Stephen to the podcast. So Stephen, what's up?
Ryan, just happy to be here, man. Can already feel the kindred spirits.
Well, I mean, right before, you were saying, what's the tone and, where we're going to go with this. And I think that, as I said, I think it's just so helpful that us as guys are just listening to what other guys like us are talking about and how they're talking. So with that said, I happened to, I was scrolling LinkedIn, which we're also connected there, and you posted something which looks like it was probably either an Instagram post or a tweet that you then shared there and kind of expanded upon. So I want to just read this and I want to just get your thoughts because I think this is a great way to set up. And I think this will speak a lot about you being an executive coach, really helping individuals focus on lifestyle design. And I think this is a good way to tee this up. And I didn't even think about this until you just said it.
He found the X channel. God only knows. I'm a lot more loose on there than I am LinkedIn because you can't be. So I'm scared to see which one you came up with.
No, it's good. Okay, so it looks like your original post said, imagine if the time and energy people pour into arguing for a presidential candidate over the past 6 months was channeled into transforming their own lives. That would be revolutionary. And then you expanded on that and said, this is how to survive the presidential race, not when it comes down to the change they'll make in everyday Americans' lives. No one is showing up at your house to create a budget, work at your job, love your spouse, play with your kids, listen to that podcast, build your personal brand, make home-cooked meals, do your push-ups and sit-ups, and design and chase the life you want. You are the damn hero of your story. And so I love that. And so I want to just hear a little bit about maybe the thought behind that. And again, you had no time to prepare for that, but your thought behind that. But then I'm sure that speaks a lot to what you're doing and the conversations you're having with other men out there. So do tell, like what comes to mind, or what spurs you on to say something like that?
Well, since I was unprepared for this question, I'll take lessons from one of the political candidates and just start off by saying, I grew up in a middle-class household.
Ladies and gentlemen, this podcast is over.
It's the safe go-to, okay?
I love it, man. I love it. I love it so
Couldn't
much.
help myself. And this is the thing. I'm like, look, I try not to be political, though obviously we can't ignore politics. Okay.
Yep.
And that was a very ranty style LinkedIn post for me because I have been, and I'll tell the story of basically where it originated from. Been talking to a friend of mine. So I have a mastermind, this is what I do for a living. So, there's always that element of when you're a coach, when you're hanging out with friends or something like that, or talking with them, or, my wife, whatever the case is, I have to remember, like, turn coach mode off. Like, that's not what you're here for. Just
wait, you haven't figured out how to coach your wife yet?
Oh, I figured it out. The problem is if she would just listen all the time, like, come on.
It doesn't work. No coaching wives, no coaching children. There you go.
It's so funny. I'll never forget if you've ever seen the video with the wife with the nail in her head. Have you ever seen this?
No.
Okay, so this was an old video. It's like 15 years old. So anyway, there's this husband and this wife talking. They're sitting on the couch, and she's telling it, and she has an actual nail sticking out of her head. Okay, and she's just looking at him. She goes, "I just don't know what it is. I just feel this pressure in my head, and like." Sometimes there's like a slight pain, and the husband's like, yeah, it's probably the nail in your head. And she goes, no, stop. I just want you to listen, okay? I just want you to listen. And okay. So he's just sitting there listening. She's like, I don't know. It's like if I like wiggle my head sometimes, I just feel like it's just strange. And then I think foggy. And I just wish I could get past this. And he's like, well, maybe if I took the nail out of your head, stop trying to fix everything. Just listen to me. And it's just the perfect microcosm of marriage, because so many times that's how it ends up being, right? It's like, we're so focused on fixing the issue, but that's not what is needed at the time. They need to communicate and blah, blah, blah. So ananyway, I love you, babe, if you end up listening to this, and I totally understand, and you were right about whatever that thing was earlier. So, but getting back to the point, so turning off coach mode, obviously really important in personal relationships. I try not to just get into it, but I can't ignore it sometimes either. And I had to call my friend out. He has been trying to set up a LinkedIn profile for 3 months. And I mean, set one up, like just create it, not optimize it or post or do it, like just set it up, because he hates his job and he wants to get a new job. And I said, well, guess what, dude? I'm pretty much a LinkedIn expert. I'm happy to help you. People actually pay me sometimes to help them. I'll do it with you for free, bud, because we're friends. And I said, just start it. It takes you 5 freaking minutes. And then we can, get you networking with other people. Start trying to find a better job. Okay, yeah, no, sounds great. 3 months have gone by. So we're sitting here having a beer, just talking, starts whining about the job again, getting into it, blah, blah, blah. We changed topics. And I just had this epiphany. I was like, I try to ignore politics as much as I can, especially during this time. I deleted Facebook permanently. I still have a profile. But like, I don't have it on my phone. If I need it, I have to get it on a desktop. Like, I deleted that 4 years ago on the last presidential election, because I was like, it's just so much noise. It brings out the worst in people. And I just didn't want to be a part of that. And it's been great. I have no regrets. So I started thinking about it. I'm like, for the past 3 months, he has brought up politics so much. Like I see him at least once a week. He has brought up politics all the time. And I finally just called him out on it. And I said, well, you know what? I said, maybe you want to be bitching about your job as much if you would take a little less time focusing on the candidate you don't like. You're not even focused on the one you are voting for. If you stop voting on the one you don't like, and you set up your damn LinkedIn profile and actually made some connections with people and started taking some interviews. And he shut up quick. And it was just like, I've had enough. And it's just, how many times in our life, and I am guilty of this. I'm not saying in any way or form I am perfect. It may not be politics necessarily, but it could be sports, or it could be something else. It's like, we have to be careful with the distractions that come at us in life that are sucking away what I call our 4 most precious resources, which is our team. It's our time, energy, attention, and money. And how you spend those 4 things, your time, energy, attention, and money, is the difference between you and Elon Musk. And maybe he's smarter than the average bear as well. But you get my point.
Yeah. Dude, that's so
that
good.
was the origin of where all that came from. I just think if we focusing on politics, whatever, that's fine. If you really want to get into it, it's good. But I've never met anybody who's changed anybody's vote on the internet. So if that's what you're doing, you can probably do some more beneficial things investing in the life that you want to live. And
no, I think that's fantastic. Okay, so we're going to make sure to put Stephen's friend, Johnny, I don't have a LinkedIn profiles link in the show notes. So that way, no.
We'll probably later. Yeah, hopefully we'll this week after I got tired of it.
Could have got him 6 more followers.
I know, right?
So I think this is a great thought, because there's going to be a lot of people. First of all, there are quite a few people right now that are so sucked into the negative narrative. And I love that you said that too. You said, like, your buddy specifically, which is so many people, are far more focused on why they hate the person that they're already against than they do focused on the person that they're supporting. And I think that goes for so many different aspects of life. We're focused far too much on the negative and not on the positive. So I think that was just a kind of a quick a pull out that I think is important for people to think about. But more importantly than that, it's just politics right now. And when it's not politics, it's something else. And, when we look at our own calendars, I mean, when I look back at, the last 10 months or 9 months of this year, And I've shared enough to say, like, I'm not going to hit the goals that I'd set for myself this year. And I've got nobody to blame but myself. Nobody. I spent time doing things that I shouldn't. I didn't spend time doing that I should. I got distracted creating something stupid that had no point or purpose whatsoever, but it just felt like I needed to do it instead of creating the things that I knew needed to happen. So when you're coaching individuals, like, do you see common distractions that people will find themselves committing a lot of time to that are preventing them from budgets, job performance, financial impact, physical fitness? Do you see like regular things on your side of things?
Yeah, I would say it's two different things. So the easy one is the phone, right? Obviously, this thing is perfectly calibrated to do exactly what society wants it to do, right? It is built to give us the right amount of dopamine squirts at the right time. It knows when you have not, been on in 5 minutes. It will shoot you some notifications. So you go and check this thing. Like, they've got this down to a science, and we are just the labs, the rat in the lab, basically.
Yep, so true.
That's the easy one. But this is what I would say. People know that. They do. Nobody, I'm not saying like, hey, guess what? You're spending too much time probably on your phone, and nobody's out here going, oh my gosh, like I never knew that. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I don't like to pick on the phone too much, even though it is the most obvious one. Now, I will say this is the thing that people are not aware, and I do highly recommend. When people come in, I did this just recently with a person, and they were considering joining my mastermind. But the big thing that they said is that, they were like asking what the time commitment was. And they said, Stephen, I'm busy. I just don't have the time. And I'm like, well, that's exactly why you need to be in my mastermind, because that's one of the things we solve for. And they're like, right, but I don't have the time to get to that time. And I said, okay, I'll believe you if you do one thing. And they said, okay, what's that? I said, pull up your phone. Okay. Pulled up the phone. Said, scroll over, go to settings. And if you have an Android, on Apple phones, it is settings and screen time. On an Android phone, you can look this up. It is settings, and I think it's called digital well-being there. So they both have this. You go, it will show you exactly how much screen time you are spending on specific apps along with the categories of the apps. I say, go back to last week's view, so you get the view of an entire week. And as long as that was a relatively normal week in your life, if you're on vacation, then go to the week before or something. But as long as that was a normal week for you, look at the gaming categories, the entertainment categories, and the social media categories. Add up over a week all of those hours that you spent on those apps. Then tell me if that's at zero. If it's not, then you have time.
Yeah.
Simple as that. So that's something I encourage everybody to do, because I kid you not, I did that with one of my members last week. You know how many hours this super busy entrepreneur with 4 kids and a family and all this other stuff, who had no time in his life doing all these other things, you know how much time he was spending on those 4 categories combined in a week?
A week, 8 hours.
29 hours. 9. And I'm like, you want to know why you don't have time to go out and get more business? You want to, well, I mean, a lot of that's on the toilet. Well, then, dude, you need to change your diet, okay?
Yeah,
if that was on the toilet. You ain't on the toilet for 29 hours. Well, I mean, it's also when I'm going to bed and stuff like that. Well, guess what? You're always tired, and maybe you could be sleeping better. Then you'll be more efficient in the day. It all ties together, right?
Yeah.
So the phone's the easy one, but I'm going to give you the hard one that a lot of people tend not to do. And I have a feeling this may have been one of the problems that you had as well. There is a category that is the ultimate problem that I solve for with people in their life, whether it's regarding their business or, in their personal lives, is I help them deal with distractions. The phone is an easy one. That's a low-hanging fruit, okay? The harder, more difficult distractions are what I call good distractions. And these are things that are actually beneficial. At the top, looking at the top layer of your life, you would go, these are not bad things. I'll give you a perfect example in my life. A couple of years ago, I had been asked to volunteer for a nonprofit and be on the board and be the treasurer. I said, sure, happy to do it, happy to help. It was a great cause. It's getting books to underprivileged children to help them read and get their reading skills up, all this other stuff. Like, who can't be behind that? The networking, I was going to network with some pretty high profile people. It was like, yeah, sure. They said it'd take about an hour a week. I was probably doing about 3 to 4 hours a week with it. Wouldn't have been that big of a deal but I just had my first kid. So I've got a son there, got promoted, starting a new element of my job, working on some other things on the side, blah, blah, blah. All of a sudden, I'm looking at my life just going, feel like I'm not getting any traction towards my goals. And I can't figure out why, because I am swamped. I'm working my ass off. And that's when this concept really hit me. I went and I read this book, Essentialism by Greg McKeown. I highly recommend it. Top 5 book of the decade for me. And yeah, on it, he has a circle on the cover with arrows pointing in all different directions, right? And I just did I went to my whiteboard, I wrote out a circle, I wrote me in the center, and then I just wrote all the things that I was doing, and I pointed them in different directions. And what happens is when you're doing a ton of things that aren't correlated to a singular goal, it's like, just like physics, right? You're being pulled in all the directions, but that circle's not really going anywhere.
Yeah.
Well, when I eliminated a lot of those circles and said, what are my goals? What is it I am trying to accomplish? And then I cut off everything that wasn't involved with that. I got those 4 hours back when I quit the nonprofit board, right? Well, all of a sudden, those arrows started all converging one way, and that moves you up. So sorry for those of you that are just listening to this if you can't see that, but it's it's basically just saying, are you trimming the fat on your time and your energy, not just your money, and then investing that in the things that move you towards your goals? Those good distractions are the things that really get us. It might be a passion project that has nothing to do with us and what we're trying to accomplish, right? Those are the harder ones that we have to really identify. So I would say those two would be the big things. And when it comes to the money stuff, honestly, there's nothing getting in the way of somebody doing a budget as far as time or energy or anything like that. That's all emotional, 100% of the time.
Yeah.
People don't want to deal with the shame, the guilt, and the fear that they have in their head of just looking at their financial situation. And normally people think it's worse than it actually is.
Yeah. No, it's so good. Yeah. I've got so many stories on time management and learning the hard way myself. And I read a book forever ago that I just reread. I reread pretty regularly, called First Things First by Stephen Covey. And
it's a good one.
I think along the same lines to what you're speaking about, when we don't have a good understanding, and I think really comes back to the root of a lot of what we started. Like, if you don't have a good understanding of who you are, if you don't have a good understanding of what you're called to, then there's an infinite number of good things that we can do with our time, with ourselves, with our gifts, with our talents. And it becomes really difficult to determine what's actually beneficial or not. Because again, like, somebody's going to hear you say, well, I quit the nonprofit board, and they're thinking to themselves, man, Stephen's a jerk. Of all the things he gave up the nonprofit. Like, how horrible is that? But we need to understand who we're called to be and what we're called to do in order to prioritize our time effectively. I was on a call with some salespeople this morning. I host a group coaching for a group of salespeople, and I was talking about their time management, interestingly enough, and saying that, look, you don't just allocate time to prospecting new business because you're in sales. You allocate time to prospecting new business because you believe that you need to dedicate that time in order to achieve the goals that you believe you've been called to achieve.
Right.
And I said, if you have a role that is distracting you from doing that, you either need to change your role or you need to change the allocation of the time to achieve a different goal. And I think people just have such a hard time with that. Again, there's this confusion around, well, if it feels good, I should do it. So do you have a way in which you bring people back kind of to that root to get them recentered on themselves or on God or whomever you start them with? Like, do you have a process to do that, or do you try to just attack the problem first and then work backwards after the initial problem is attacked?
No, it's a good question. So I guess it would be maybe two different things. So on the one side, I have my own 7-step process, and basically these 7 steps just follow the 4 phases of strategy. So I came from the management consulting world, did sales in there, different things like that. Doesn't matter if we're talking about business strategy, war strategy, personal strategy, all strategy is based off 4 different phases. You have destination, starting point, journey, and checkpoints. So those are the 4 phases: destination, starting point, journey, checkpoints. So the 7 steps that I have just walk you through those 4 phases. So in the mastermind, like, that's what we're doing, is we're creating a strategy. But as part of that, with lifestyle design, a lot of people aren't really familiar with that term. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's like we are just intentionally designing the kind of life that we want. So this is the 3 questions that lifestyle design sets out to answer. What it is, and you have to start here, because a lot of times people are like, well, I want to get my money right. Okay, great. Why? I mean, that's like the adult thing to do, or Dave Ramsey told me to do it sometime, or whatever the case is, right? It's like, okay, that's not a great reason, but it's something, I guess. So the problem that a lot of people don't realize is, like, they feel the need to do something, but they don't have clarity on what. So what I do is we walk through 3 questions, and normally I'm doing this, during the process whenever I'm talking with somebody. Lifestyle design boils down to these 3 questions. The first is, what do you want? The second is, why do you want it? And the third one is, how are you going to get it? And they're very simple questions. Now, what I do is I do put the constraint on them that we're thinking 3 years out, because what do you want in life? Like, okay, that's a little too ethereal. So I put 2 constraints on it. The first one is that you only get 3. Okay, there's a lot of reasons, psychology behind that, but you only get 3. If you can only pick 3 things you want in life, and if you look 3 years ahead and said, these are the 3 things I want to be able to either attain or accomplish within those 3 years, this is what they are. Okay, great. Why do you want those things? And, an example I love to use is a house. A lot of reasons to buy a house. It's like, that's the what. What do you want? I want to buy a house. Okay, why do you want to buy a house? Well, I want it for an investment property, or I want it to move into a safer neighborhood so my kids can get into a better school, or I want it because my mom is aging and we need a bigger house so I can have her come live with us. Well, the what is the same. The why is incredibly different on all of those. And when you ask why, it actually changes the what sometimes, because in the scenario where you're like, well, I just feel the need to take care of my mom and we need to move into a place with a bigger house. It's like, okay, so what you want is not necessarily to buy a bigger house. What you want is to take care of your mom. Well, have we explored if having her move in with you guys, even though you already have 7 kids, your wife is incredibly stressed out, and, you don't live in an area that's going to be particularly conducive for her to stay active, there's no elderly community around it, is that the best play to take care of her? That's just one example. And then it allows us to think more broadly about the solution than just this pigeonhole of what we thought it was. And then from there, it's just, okay, now that we know what we want, why we want it, how do we get it? Like, let's map it out and get after it. Very similar to you and your process, the 90-day stuff. I do 12 months, 6 months, 90 days, a month, and then today, right? But I always tell people, I was like, anything we plan beyond 90 days, hold it like this. It's probably not going to last. But failure to plan is a plan to fail, right? So there you go.
No, so true. So true. So how does this apply to your own life? Because first of all, you got here for some reason. And secondly, it doesn't always go exactly the way we want it to. And so we're constantly our own, hopefully best, but sometimes our own worst student in this journey that we're on. And so how'd you get here, and how are you applying these types of things to your own life?
Yeah, it's a great question. So basically what happened is I was in corporate sales, for this company. God bless me. I was doing really well, 4 years straight in a row of hitting the top sales award, the winner's circle trip, all this other stuff. Basically what ended up happening is one day, because of the nature of my job, I was with the C-level executives of this billion-dollar company in this big boardroom. It's like something out of a movie, overlooking the city of Tampa. It was really nice. And I had brought in one of these experts, from my company to come in and talk about corporate strategy. And that's where, this lady talked about those 4 phases of strategy that I listed: the destination, starting point, journey, checkpoints. And I had heard this talk before, but for whatever reason, this time around, it just really hit me differently. I was like, that would be a really smart thing to do in my own life. Like, I should start doing that. So that's what I did. I figured out where I wanted to go, and I chose my 3 objectives. And, then I figured out, okay, well, where am I? All right, well, this is where my money's at. This is where, I wanted to be at a certain place, like, with my physical performance. It's like, okay, this is where I'm at. And it's like, what gets measured gets improved. So I made sure that I had, very quantifiable numbers for everything. And then, it's just a process of figuring it all out. So did that probably happened about 3 years into my career. About the 5th year of my career, I'm at my 4th winter circle, hanging out with all these people that we kind of called the regulars. These were people from all over the company that they're the rock stars. We know we've got something figured out. It's like we will see 95% of all of us at the next winter circle. It was kind of one of those things. And one of the girls asked me, we were all sitting at a table, and she asked me, she goes, "What are you doing? Like, with your, on your day to day?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about? You did just as well as I did. We're all here. Like, we're all doing the same stuff, right?" She goes, "No." She goes, "I ping you after 5. You're never online. She was like, "You never responded to any of my emails. If I email you on the weekend, I look, you're not there." And I'm like, "Well, yeah, it's 5 in the weekend. Like, I'm living my life. Like, what are you doing?" And she's like, "I'm working." That's how I get here. And then all of a sudden, everybody else at the table started going, "Yeah, man, like, you're not working weekends at all?" And I'm like, "No, like, almost never." And it became this conversation then that was very revealing for me of understanding the fact that I used my time and viewed time in a way that other people did not. And that allowed me to be more efficient than they were. And even though we were getting to the same place, the level of effort that it took to get there was actually very different. Yeah. And from that, I basically backwards fell into coaching. And, I wasn't charging anybody. I was just helping friends at that point, but then other people started to ask. So then I was like, well, I should probably formalize something here. And then that's where I ended up refining this process over the past 5 to 6 years. All that to be said, I've been living out, maybe not this exact process that I've refined over these years, but I've been living out these principles for the past 11 years of my life. And we are now, me and my wife are, well, for me, that I started this before I met her, but we're 10 years married last month. And,
awesome. Congrats.
or I'm sorry, last week. So exciting times. And lots of nails in the head taken out.
Yeah.
And for me, the way that it's played out is it's just enabled me to, number one, know exactly what it is that I'm working towards and have a lot of life satisfaction because of it. It's made my marriage, honestly, just smoother because right now my wife is getting ready for an interview. So as we speak, actually, she might be on it. And she has a great job. She doesn't necessarily need this job. But the thing is, on our current 3-year plan, we're at, that ends in December 2025. On our current 3-year plan of our 3 goals, there's one objective that we have that is to get her from working 5 days a week to 4 days a week. Well, if we were to look at the microcosm of just jobs and we didn't have these long-term objectives set for ourselves and that are aligned with our values to give her more time off with our kids and different things like that, if we didn't have that, if I was looking at job A and job B, the one she has and then the one she's, having an interview with right now, I would be like, stay at job A, right? Because there's more money and it's more fulfilling. Like, it's more of what she wants to be doing. But because we know we want to get her to 4 days a week, this new job offers the flexibility for that. The other one doesn't. And even though the money's slightly less, that is our primary concern, not the money. Well, if I didn't have that, then we probably wouldn't be even considering job B because of that. So it doesn't just help you when you have a strategy for your life. It doesn't just help you decide what to do. It also helps you decide what not to do. And there's a lot of power in that.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's something that a lot more people need to learn is what to say no to and how to say no to it. This sounds overly cocky, and I do not mean it to be this way at all, but I have been the victim of being really good at a lot of stuff for the majority of my career. And so it's very easy for me. So I don't talk about it a lot, but I do corporate consulting, primarily around building out a sales strategy for organizations, a playbook. And what inevitably happens more often, or had happened for a long time, was I would get into these engagements and then I would recognize that there was some operational inefficiency. So I would start to consult on that. Then I realized that there was some financial inefficiencies. And so we'd start to work on tweaks there. And it wasn't that I wasn't getting paid for it. It wasn't that it wasn't beneficial to the organization. So everybody's winning, but I would find myself in this place over a long period of time, which then obviously then that grew the relationship, it extended it again. Good. But I found myself in these places where it was like, how the hell did I get here? Like, yes, it's all these good things, but it's really away from what I wanted to do, to the point where in 2020, one of the blessings of COVID was it woke me up to the reality that I needed a break from that space, because
Yes.
it was just, I was doing it for the wrong reasons. And when people hear that, they think, oh, you were doing bad things. I'm like, no, actually, I was doing, again, all the right things, all the good things. And I was making actually more money than I'd ever and have ever made during that period of time. But I just wasn't feeling great about what I was doing or who I was doing it for, because again, it wasn't fulfilling what I believe my calling was. And so I break away, reinventing myself, been rebuilding that. And now we're getting close to a place, where I feel like I'm in that lane again. But I said no to so many things. I would have somebody come to me and say, hey, you want to get involved in this business? And I'm like, oh my gosh, that sounds like a really cool opportunity. No, and those are really, really hard. The wisdom of being married here too was I always went to my wife. And because I had already shared with my wife what my long-term intentions were, her response is always, do you really need to be doing that? And I'm like, damn it, no, I don't. No, I don't.
Great question.
Yeah. But think about this, and I'm sure this is this can be the same for you. I don't know if you're in a mastermind yourself in terms of you participate versus just leading, but
yes, I am. Yeah.
Yeah. So like I needed, and I think this is something that is so valuable for entrepreneurs that most entrepreneurs don't do, which is a big part of why I serve the professional community, though we're working on more personal things, because we're in silos and it's lonely and we know it, but we don't spend enough time investing into that aspect of our lives. And so we don't have people that know everything about us. So if I'm going to have somebody speaking into my life, they need to know my financial position, my financial goals, my personal relationships, my spiritual, like well-being, like all these things. And once they know all those things, then I come to them and I'm like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. And they're like, no, you're not. No, you're not, because that doesn't align with anything else. And if you really want to do that anyway, you better convince us otherwise. So I think these are wise conversations that more people need to be having. Again, it could be the very micro of somebody that's looking, they're an employee in an organization and they're like, Stephen, I just want to redesign my life because it's a mess. And you're like, great, sure, let's do that. Or it may be somebody that's in the business world, owns a business, is absolutely crushing it and doing so well, and they don't think there's anything wrong. But what they're doing is they don't have somebody objectively outside that's speaking into them to help them navigate towards where they really should be going, where they're going right now.
Well, to that point, I want to bring up Elon Musk. So just recently, one of the most amazing things I've ever seen in my life was that they caught a rocket with a massive mechanical arm that appropriately called Mechzilla. I love how geeky he can be.
Yes.
And they caught a rocket that was the equivalent of a 15-story building in the air and just clamped that thing, right? I grew up in Orlando, Florida, which is about 90 minutes away from Kennedy Space Center, where the majority of NASA, launches their rockets. So I grew up with a particular fascination with space because we would literally hear the sonic boom and could see the plume of the rockets going up as I was growing up. So for me, watching that, having, no rocket scientist, right? But I can have a pretty basic understanding of the level of complexity, the physics involved, the potential disasters this could all be. And the fact that they got it perfect on the first test run, mind-blowing.
Yeah.
So Elon Musk said something just recently, or he said something a couple of years ago, but I saw it just recently. There was a guy who was asking him a question. And he goes, one of the biggest problems that engineers face is that they optimize something that shouldn't even exist. And in our lives, I see parallels to that all the time, because you have a problem that I have, that a lot of other people that you probably work with do, that are probably listening to this podcast, right? What you said, you weren't trying to be arrogant, you're trying to be factual, right? And you totally are right. You're very good at a lot of things. I call that capability. You are a person who is highly capable. You adapt well. You learn quickly. You're probably naturally curious, right? All of these things generally equate to success at almost anything you do when you sprinkle a lot of effort on there. Well, the problem with that is, imagine if capability was a sword, and then you are put in the center of this forest and you can't see 5 feet in any direction, right? Well, you can start hacking away with that sword and you're going to get somewhere and you're going to make progress. And you're going to be like, look at me, I'm making a really cool path. I'm a trailblazer.
Yeah.
And you're right. But the problem is, if you don't have a compass to say, well, I just need to go north, you know, you go north, great. You know exactly where you're going. You'll hack through that forest. You're going to get somewhere. You're going to make incredible progress. Without that compass, without knowing your destination, exactly what you're trying to get to, then you're just going to end up hacking away in a lot of different directions, and you will get a lot of places, but it doesn't mean you're going to get where you want to be. And that's the big difference. And that's why I think that people need to list out their values, number one, and limit it to 5. And don't give this BS like, oh, my family's my value. Okay. If you work 100 hours a week, don't lie to yourself. No, it's not. Okay. So values, number one, list those. And then second, you get 3 things. What are 3 things you want to accomplish in your life? That's all you can really feasibly do in, with the time, energy, attention, and money that you have. Yeah. So do those things. But if you don't have clarity around that, you're going to end up doing a lot of the mistakes that you and I have both made, which is we go off and do things, probably even show some success with them. And it's like, that didn't get me anywhere.
Yep. No, I think it's so good. When you bring up Elon Musk, I've shared this story a few times. I read a book years ago that was, I guess it was his only approved, the only biography that was written about him that he actually approved. And it's like just this random biography. Anyway, so one of the most fascinating things that I
They're going to have to rewrite that book again soon.
Yeah. Oh, dude. Well, what was so fascinating was there was a story that they were telling about interviewing people that knew him when he was younger. And one of the things that they found was that girls did not like to date him when he was in high school, because on their dates, all he talked about was space and putting somebody on and getting somebody to Mars. Like at 16, 17, 18 years old. Well, that's a loony person, right? That's just so dead set on one thing. What's amazing is as you look at everything that he has built, it's all with that purpose in mind. Like, yes, he's building Tesla, and yes, he is building so much automation and AI around that. But that's all to fund the ultimate program that he's after. And
it's like Mars.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's just so incredible. Now, I think we also have to be wise to the fact that somebody like that is, because I have so much respect for him, somebody like that is so committed to the things that he's doing. I am grateful for his efforts. I love him. I drive a Tesla. I love Tesla.
Yep. I got one too.
What he's doing, putting people in space, going to rescue our astronauts from the space station. Incredible. What he's done with Twitter and how he has really leveled the free speech playing field.
It's been huge.
Was so desperately needed. I'm so grateful for these efforts that make him so incredibly committed and smart and successful. Has also destroyed parts of his life. And I'm sure there's other things that are there, right? Like from what I understand, he does love his kids, but multiple failed marriages. And so it's like, we need to make sure that we understand, and I'm sure you would agree with this, and you alluded to a lot of this. It's like, when you pick those 3 things, as you said, we need to be very wise to the fact of what we're actually committing to. Because again, I think you would agree with this, but I believe that if we believe in God and we follow Jesus, then we have 2 default responsibilities. And it doesn't mean that you can't set goals that are a little bit different than this, but we are to God first, to our wives second, and right below that, our kids. And so it's like, if we're gonna set out, which so many men do, right? Like we're warriors, we want to go out and slay the world, we want to go out and achieve all the success, and it's like, yes, we can do that. But if we ever set a goal that intends to or ends up destroying our relationship with God or our responsibility as providers and protectors to our family, then we've lost it all, right? We
Totally
may
agree.
get that goal, but we've destroyed everything else. And so I think that's the other thing that often comes to mind. Like we look out and we're like, man, I want to be like Elon, or, oh man, I want to be like Alex Hormozy and like the business he's building. And it's like, we just need to be really careful, because if we're not, we're going to end up destroying the very things that we were called to serve first. And
Well, it comes down to the question, right? If you want something, this is a question that I've kind of come up with recently. I've asked different elements, or asked it a couple different ways, but I like this one the best so far. And it's like, when I know somebody's objectives and we've picked out those long-term goals, the next question that comes after that is, okay, great. Now you know where you want to go. Now, don't tell me what you're willing to do to get there, because we don't know that yet. Tell me what you're willing to sacrifice to get there, because everything is a trade-off. Elon is willing to sacrifice his family. He is willing to sacrifice, like living some type of normal life, vacations, getting a big fancy yacht and sailing around the world, right? Guess who's not willing to do that? Jeff Bezos, owner of Amazon, right? He likes going to the parties, right? He's filthy freaking rich, right? Sure, he sacrificed his family, unfortunately. But it's like, you're talking about somebody with an equivalent amount of money as Elon almost, who's not doing having a tenth of the impact that he is. Well, why? Because he's not willing to sacrifice a lot of the things that Elon is. So let's bring it back down to regular human level that don't have billions of dollars to play with, right? It's like, okay, you want financial stability? Okay, you want to make sure that you're, raising your children right? Can you sacrifice this for an extra hour a day? I'm not asking you to get off social media completely and delete everything on there or do whatever. But if you're putting in 10 hours a week, can we get it down to freaking 5? Because this is the thing. This is a drug. I get it. Another little dopamine rushes that it gets you, but it's like, let's get real. Let's talk serious. If you're not willing to give up scrolling through social media, paying attention to people who don't give a damn about you, and you're not willing to sacrifice even a portion of that to reinvest back into the people that you tell me that you value the most in life, stop lying to yourself. No, you don't. Because priorities are not the things that we say they are. Priorities are the things that we do. And that's where I just call BS on people left and right. I'm like, don't tell me your values. Show me what you're willing to sacrifice, and I'll know what they are from the fruits of them.
Grant, that was the end of your post right there.
All right, that got hot. I'm like, whoo, did it get hot in here? I get worked up on that one.
That's so good, dude. I mean, that was a perfect bookend on where we started, which was living as the hero of your story. Like it is yours to live, and you can define that any way you want, but you have to be considerate of so many things along the way. So I super appreciate conversations like this. I mean, we could go on for hours, talking about stuff like this, but.
And let me say, can I say one quick thing?
Yeah, please.
This is a really great parallel, actually. I'm a huge geek. You can see the Spider-Man poster like right behind here, okay? Spider-Man is my favorite superhero. Was as a kid, as I've grown up, learned even the story of how Spider-Man came to be created, all this other stuff, continues to be my favorite. One of the least favorite superheroes, though, Captain Marvel, the one in the movie specifically, right? A lot of people do not like Captain Marvel and forget like what the stupid media paints it at. They'll be like, oh, it's a woman, blah, blah, blah. That's ridiculous. Wonder Woman was ranked like one of the highest and all this other stuff. So I don't want to hear that crap. The real reason a lot of people that were huge fans of the MCU and geekdom and all this other stuff, the real reason that that was the first superhero that people were really turned off to is because the way that they presented her story was something that was antithetical to every other superhero that we normally see. And that was the fact that her powers were so easily acquired. That is the number one thing that is so different about hers. It was kind of a happenstance thing, All the other superheroes that you look at, Bruce Banner in the Hulk, he's being hunted by the military. Lots of pain and fear. He has the fear every time he turns into the Hulk. He doesn't know what he's going to do, right? You know, like you can go through every single one. Spider-Man lost his family, you know, doesn't feel like he can marry the love of his life, all this other stuff because he's scared of the danger. Like all these things, all these heroes sacrifice. That's what draws us to heroes. That's why I call people in my mastermind, I call them heroes because I'm like, listen, I'm just the guide. Okay. You are the hero of your story. And the reason that we call BS on heroes like Captain Marvel, the way she's portrayed in that, is because we're like, she didn't have to sacrifice anything to get what she did. We know inherently that is just fake. It's not true. So the same thing applies in our own lives. If you want to build the life you want, if you want to have a successful marriage, if you want to glorify God and become more like Jesus, the ultimate hero who paid the ultimate sacrifice, right? Took on all of God's wrath. Sacrifice is built into the journey in order to get what you want. So don't lie to yourself and think that you're going to be able to have what you want without it. Accept it and then just freaking go after it. So that was, sorry, if that wasn't enough of the book, and I just had to like really get on that one because to me it's just so important because it's not, we reflect it in fiction, but at the end of the day, our ultimate hero is Christians, paid the ultimate sacrifice. And it's like, if that's who we're trying to be like, then we should know that that's what we have coming for ourselves.
That was the bonus chapter right there. That's good, man. I love it. I really appreciate that. You have unburdened me from what you said you were going to burden me with at the beginning or something like that. No, it's so good, man. I appreciate conversations like this. I want to welcome as many men specifically into these types of conversations because we're having them. I just don't think we're having them often enough and in community with one another so we can rub off on each other, so we can push each other away from the things that we should not be doing, so we can encourage each other into things that we should be doing, that we can be more vulnerable with each other. So there's just so much here that benefits from having discussions like this. So dude, thanks. I appreciate connecting online, making it a little bit more real, getting to see each other face to face and, you know, sharing 45 minutes or so. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people that will be blessed by this. I'll put your contact information to the show notes so people can get in contact with you. But thanks, Stephen.
I really appreciate it. It's been an absolute pleasure. And if I can leave one call to action for the listeners that are out there, it's this. Take the same principles of what I was saying with social media and the phone and apply it, you know, especially to the men out there, because I think women tend to be a little better at this. For the men out there, just do this. Next time you're with your buddies, okay? If you want to talk politics, it's fine. If you want to talk about football, basketball, or whatever sport you like, it's fine. I'm not saying don't talk about those things, but just go into the conversation consciously aware and say, you know what? I'm just going to intentionally bring up, hey guys, you know, I love talking about football, love talking about politics. Can I just ask everybody a question here? What are you guys like really working on in your life? What's something that's really important to you? Just take 10 minutes of your time together. Just talk about that. Doesn't have to be a full-blown meeting and let's do something. No, just bring it up casually. That would be my call to action for everybody. Start small and see how it grows from there.
So good, man. All right. Well, guys, you heard it. Make something of those conversations. Go have real ones. Go ask that question. Go dig in. Go share. Go be the one that starts that conversation.
Absolutely.
By sharing with your buddies what you're doing and what you're working on and what you're struggling with. Like, you want to be a man. You want to be a leader. You want to stand out. You want to have influence. Be bold enough to be vulnerable. You guys know I talk about that often. So if you like this, like it, want to share it with somebody else, do that. I appreciate all of your guys' support. It's another episode of Unlocking Greatness in the books. Peace.